Welcome to Lose Yourself to Films. This is Road to the Odyssey, a series where I'll be revisiting Christopher Nolan's films from the very beginning, looking for the ideas, themes, and pieces of Nolan DNA that would eventually define his career and ultimately lead us to the Odyssey. Every master of their craft starts somewhere, and Christopher Nolan is no exception. And we're only halfway through the journey, with those ideas continuing to take shape as we move forward. So let's continue the journey. Next stop on the road to the Odyssey, The Prestige. The Prestige stars Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Scarlett Johansson, Rebecca Hall, Andy Serkis, and David Bowie, and Piper Perabo. The story follows two magicians played by Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale as they dismantle and destroy their lives trying to outdo each other following the tragedy of Robert Angier's wife, Julia. They chase the ultimate illusion across Victorian London as they sacrifice their sanity, safety, and everything around them to try and master a teleportation trick that defies all logic, the transported man. So yeah, at this point, Nolan really has settled into his themes when it comes to his films, because this one hits a lot of the marks that we've discussed in previous videos. But The Prestige also takes some of those ideas and pushes them even further. So let's dive right in. As always, Nolan loves to use non-linear storytelling, usually to immerse the audience deeper into the story, but in The Prestige, he uses it for something more, to build mystery and misdirection. The film's first words are you watching closely?" immediately challenging us to pay attention. Then, we're introduced to John Cutter's explanation that every trick consists of 3 acts: the pledge, the turn, and the prestige. And Nolan takes that idea and applies it to the film itself. He throws this into a non-linear story, constantly moving between timelines and perspectives, giving us pieces of information without immediately explaining how they connect. We're essentially watching a magic trick without knowing what the trick is. And by the end of the film, we're hit with the twists and turns from both magicians, making it difficult to keep track of the tricks they've been playing on each other. And more importantly, the trick Nolan has been playing on us. We're so focused on trying to figure out the magician's secrets that we don't always realize Nolan is performing his own magic trick right in front of us. And that's what makes the structure so brilliant. The magicians are trying to fool each other while Nolan is trying to fool the audience. By the time we reach The Prestige, we're forced to look back at everything we've seen and reconsider what we thought we understood. So when the film asks, "Are you watching closely?" it isn't just talking about the magic tricks happening within the story, it's talking directly to us. Identity and perception play a huge role in the film because both Robert Angier and Alfred Borden gradually sacrifice their personal identities for their stage personas. Throughout the film, both magicians trade pieces of who they really are in order to outdo each other. And from the beginning of the film to the end, they give up their morals, their relationships, and eventually even their sense of self in pursuit of greatness. They begin caring more about their performances and perfecting the transported man than they do about who they are when they step off the stage. But where you really have to pay attention is early on in the film when Alfred watches the Chinese magician Ching Ling Su and explains to Robert what makes his performance so convincing: total devotion to his art. And this scene is actually one of the biggest pieces of foreshadowing in the entire film, because Alfred understands what it takes to pull off an impossible illusion. You have to live the lie 24/7, and the idea eventually becomes the foundation of his entire life, affecting his marriage and making it impossible for Sarah, his wife, to understand the full truth of the man she's married. And then there's Robert. After Alfred misleads him into believing that Tesla has the secret to the transported man, Robert travels all the way to Colorado to discover that Tesla's machine actually works, but at a horrifying cost. Every time he uses it, another version of himself is created. Robert eventually returns home and performs the trick night after night, knowing that one version of himself will fall into the tank while another appears on the balcony. And that leads to one of the film's most important questions he asks later on, which is he the man who falls into the box or the man who appears on the balcony? After so many performances, even the idea of who Robert Angier actually is becomes difficult to separate from the illusion he has created. And by the end of the film, we discover that Alfred actually has a twin brother. The two brothers have been sharing the identity of Alfred Borden, allowing them to perform the transported man by completely dedicating themselves to the illusion. One brother is Alfred, the other is Fallon, and together they have sacrificed their individual identities for the sake of their art. Robert ends up in a strangely similar situation, although his takes a much darker turn. Tesla's machine creates duplicates of him, and every night another version of Robert becomes part of the illusion. And this is where Nolan is essentially performing the Prestige himself. Throughout the film, we've been watching Robert appear to die, only for another version of him to seemingly return. By the end, we're forced to reconsider what we've actually been watching, and whether the Robert we've been following is even the same Robert from one performance to the next. So yeah, 2026 marks the 20th anniversary of The Prestige, and honestly that's crazy considering how well this film still holds up today. It might have not been a blockbuster back when it was released in theaters, but it still has a massive cult following. And when you look at everything Nolan is doing here, it really feels like he has finally locked down his style. And at this point in his career, Nolan has established so many of the ideas and themes that would go on to define him as a filmmaker. But this is really just the beginning, because Nolan is about to get the chance to finally make a film he had been working on for over a decade. A film that would take everything we've been seeing throughout this journey and push it to another level. And that's our next stop on the road to the Odyssey, Inception. So yeah, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe to follow along on this journey, and I'll see you on the next one.